You've been staring at me for 10 minutes.
I'm sorry, it's not you, it's that bracelet.
Lower your voice.
Where did you get it?
If you know what this is, we are both in danger. Do I know you?
No, but I think my wife did.
Your wife?
She left me a photo of you before she died.
Then don't say another word in front of these people. Stop looking at the guests.
I saw the man who followed my daughter last week.
Which one?
The man in the blue shirt.
Then keep smiling. My security is already watching him.
When billionaire Aurora Sinclair stepped out of her convoy at midnight and called mechanic Ethan Vale's name across the darkened street, a man she had never met, whose daughter watched terrified from an upstairs window, whose entire neighborhood now stared in confusion, nobody understood that her arrival would destroy everything he built to keep his family safe. But Aurora knew his name. She knew exactly where he lived, and the smirk on her face suggested she knew things about Ethan that even he had forgotten. This is a story about power, secrets, and two broken people who never should have met. If you want to see how a single father survives when a billionaire decides his quiet life is over, stay until the end. Hit like and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The sky over Silver Creek turned the color of bruised plums as Ethan Vale wiped grease off his hands and glanced at the kitchen clock. 6:47 p.m. Chloe's bedtime started at 8, which gave him exactly 1 hour and 13 minutes to finish the carburetor rebuild, heat up leftover spaghetti, check her math homework, and pretend he wasn't completely exhausted. He looked good for 32. That's what people said when they didn't know what else to say. Tall enough that he had to duck slightly under the garage door frame, broad-shouldered from years of hauling motorcycle frames, with dark hair that fell across his forehead because he kept forgetting to get it cut. His hands were always stained with oil, no matter how hard he scrubbed, and there was a scar above his left eyebrow from the time his ex-wife threw a coffee mug during their last argument. The scar didn't bother him anymore. Most things didn't bother him anymore. Silver Creek was the kind of town where nothing happened on purpose. 2,300 people, one main street, 2 gas stations, and a diner that served breakfast all day because the owner couldn't be bothered to print a lunch menu. The houses sat far apart on wide lots, separated by old oak trees and fences that hadn't been painted in decades. People knew each other's names but minded their own business, which was exactly why Ethan moved here 3 years ago. After the divorce, after the bankruptcy, after his ex-wife's lawyer made sure Ethan walked away with nothing except Chloe and a storage unit full of tools. He didn't talk about those years. Nobody in Silver Creek asked. The garage behind his rental house smelled like motor oil, rust, and the cheap coffee he brewed in a dented percolator every morning. Vintage motorcycles in various states of disassembly lined the walls. A 1974 Norton Commando, a 1983 Honda CB65. Oh, a Triumph Bonneville, missing its entire electrical system. Restoration work paid just enough to cover rent and groceries if he didn't think too hard about the credit card bills. Ethan tightened the last bolt on the carburetor and heard the screen door slam. "Dad!" Chloe appeared in the garage doorway, all sharp elbows and wild brown curls, wearing mismatched socks and an oversized hoodie that used to be his. 8 years old going on 30. She had his eyes, dark green, suspicious of everything, and her mother's ability to see straight through bullshit. "What's wrong?" Ethan asked. "Nothing's wrong. Why do you always think something's wrong?" "Because you only run out here when something's wrong." Chloe crossed her arms. "There's weird cars across the street." Ethan glanced toward the front of the property. Through the gap between the garage and the house, he could see the edge of the old Patterson place, a massive Victorian estate that had been empty for 2 years. The for sale sign finally came down last month, but nobody had seen the new owner. "What kind of cars?" "Black ones. Like really black, with tinted windows." "How many?" "I don't know. 4, 5? They're huge." Ethan wiped his hands on a rag and walked toward the driveway. Chloe followed close behind, her sneakers crunching on gravel. The convoy sat in the circular driveway across the street like a fleet of armored shadows. 5 Cadillac Escalades, blacked out, engines still running. Floodlights mounted on the Patterson mansion flickered to life, illuminating the entire property in harsh white light. "That's weird, right?" Chloe whispered. "Yeah." "Who moves in at night?" "Rich people." "How do you know they're rich?" "Because poor people use U-Hauls." The front door of the lead SUV opened. A woman stepped out. Ethan felt something shift in his chest. Not attraction exactly, more like recognition, the way you recognize a storm forming on the horizon before the first drop of rain falls. She was maybe 5'7", wearing a charcoal suit that looked like it cost more than Ethan's truck. Her hair was dark, pulled back tight, and even from across the street he could see the sharp angles of her face, the way she moved with the kind of confidence that comes from never being told no. She said something to one of the drivers, her voice low and clipped, then turned toward Ethan's property and looked directly at him. For 3 long seconds, neither of them moved. Then she smiled. Not a friendly smile, not a polite neighbor smile, a smile that said, "I see you." "Ethan Vale," she called out, her voice carrying easily across the empty street. Chloe grabbed his arm. "Dad, how does she know your name?" Ethan's stomach went cold. "I don't know." The woman started walking toward them. Not fast, but deliberate, her heels clicking against the asphalt. 2 men in dark suits followed a few paces behind, hands folded in front of them like Secret Service agents. She stopped at the edge of Ethan's driveway. Up close, she was younger than he expected, maybe 30, with pale skin and eyes so blue they looked almost gray. There was something unsettling about her face, like a sculpture that was technically perfect but somehow wrong in ways you couldn't name. "You've been watching me," she said. Ethan kept his voice flat. "You just pulled up. And yet here you are, staring. It's a small street, hard not to notice 5 SUVs. She tilted her head slightly, studying him the way you'd study a bug under glass. "Aurora Sinclair." She didn't offer her hand. Ethan didn't move. "This is my daughter Chloe," he said, because the silence was starting to feel dangerous. Aurora's gaze shifted to Chloe for half a second, then back to Ethan. "Cute kid," Chloe bristled. "I'm not cute. I'm 8. My mistake." Another long silence. Aurora glanced back at the mansion, then at Ethan's garage, taking in the motorcycles visible through the open door, the oil-stained concrete, the rusted toolboxes. "You fix bikes," she said. "Sometimes. You any good? Good enough? Modest? Realistic?" She smiled again, and this time it almost looked genuine. "I like that. Most people try to impress me. I'm not most people." Clearly. One of the men behind her stepped forward and murmured something Ethan couldn't hear. Aurora waved him off without looking. "I'll be direct," she said. "I value my privacy. I assume you value yours." "I do." "Good. Then we won't have any problems." Ethan felt Chloe's fingers tighten around his arm. "Problems?" he asked. "Curiosity, questions, people showing up uninvited." Aurora's expression didn't change, but her voice dropped half a degree. "I moved here to get away from that. I'd appreciate if it stayed that way. I'm not interested in your business." "Perfect. Then we'll get along fine." She turned and walked back toward the mansion, her security team falling into step behind her. The convoy stayed running, headlights cutting through the darkness like searchlights. Ethan watched until she disappeared inside. Chloe let out a breath she'd been holding. "Dad, that was super weird." "Yeah. How did she know your name?" "I don't know." "Are we in trouble?" Ethan looked down at his daughter's wide, worried eyes and felt the familiar weight of responsibility settle over him like a wet coat. For 3 years, he had built a life where nothing unexpected happened. No drama, no complications, no strangers showing up in the middle of the night who somehow knew his name. "No," he said, even though he wasn't sure. "We're not in trouble." They walked back inside. Ethan reheated the spaghetti. Chloe finished her homework at the kitchen table, chewing her pencil and occasionally glancing toward the window. At exactly 8 o'clock, Ethan tucked her into bed, kissed her forehead, and told her everything was fine. Then he went back downstairs and stood at the kitchen sink, staring across the street at the Patterson mansion. Every single light in the house was on. The next morning, Ethan woke to the sound of a dog barking, not the distant, occasional barking of a neighborhood pet. This was close, loud, persistent. He rolled out of bed, pulled on jeans and a t-shirt, and stumbled downstairs. Through the kitchen window, he saw a massive German shepherd tearing across his backyard, trailing a broken leash behind it. Jesus Christ! Ethan stepped outside barefoot, the morning dew soaking through his socks immediately. The dog saw him and stopped, ears perked, tail wagging like they were old friends. "Hey, buddy," Ethan said carefully. "Where'd you come from?" The dog barked once, then bolted toward the garage. "No, no, no!" Ethan chased after it, but the dog was already inside, sniffing around the motorcycles with alarming enthusiasm. It stopped in front of the Norton Commando and started licking the exhaust pipe. "Get away from that!" The dog ignored him. Ethan heard footsteps behind him and turned to see Aurora Sinclair standing in his driveway, wearing yoga pants and a fitted jacket, her hair pulled into a ponytail. She looked impossibly put together for 7 in the morning. "That's mine," she said. "Your dog just licked my exhaust pipe." "He does that? Why?" "No idea. I've spent $10,000 on trainers. Apparently he's unteachable." The dog trotted over to Aurora and sat at her feet, looking perfectly obedient. Ethan stared. "You're kidding." "I don't kid about dogs." Aurora clipped a new leash onto the shepherd's collar. "His name is Titan. He's a rescue. Previous owner kept him chained in a basement for 2 years. "That's awful." "Yes. Now he's neurotic and doesn't understand boundaries. We have that in common." Ethan almost smiled. Aurora noticed. "You should do that more." "What?" "Smile. You look less angry." "I'm not angry." "You look angry." "I'm just tired." "Same thing." She turned to leave, then paused. "I'm having a security system installed today. There will be workers around. Thought I should mention it." "Okay. Also, if Titan gets out again, just bring him back. Don't call animal control or anything dramatic." "I wasn't planning to." "Good." She walked away, Titan trotting beside her like a show dog. Ethan stood in his garage, staring after her, wondering what the hell just happened. By noon, the entire neighborhood knew Aurora Sinclair's name. Ethan heard it at the hardware store when he stopped to buy sandpaper. He heard it at the gas station when he filled up his truck. He heard it at the diner when he grabbed lunch, sitting at the counter while 2 older women debated whether Aurora was a tech mogul, a movie producer, or a Russian spy. "She's got cameras everywhere," one of them said. "Linda saw the installers putting them up this morning. High-end stuff. Military grade." "Why would she need military-grade cameras in Silver Creek?" "Maybe she's in witness protection." "Don't be ridiculous." "Well, something's going on. Nobody moves into a place like that unless they're hiding from something." Ethan kept his head down and ate his burger. When he got home, there were 3 white vans parked across the street and a crew of technicians swarming Aurora's property like ants. They were mounting cameras on every corner of the house, running cables through the walls, installing motion sensors along the fence line. Chloe stood on the front porch, watching with her arms crossed. "They've been there all day," she said when Ethan walked up. "I know. Why does one person need that many cameras?" "Privacy, I guess." "That's not privacy, that's paranoia." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Where'd you learn that word?" "School. Mrs. Henderson says people who don't trust anyone are paranoid." "Mrs. Henderson sounds smart." "She is. She also says paranoid people usually have a reason." Ethan looked across the street. One of the technicians was testing a camera mounted above the front door, swiveling it left and right. The lens was pointed directly at Ethan's house. He felt a prickle of unease. That night, Ethan was working late in the garage when he heard a knock on the side door. He opened it to find Aurora standing there holding a bottle of wine. "Peace offering," she said. Ethan glanced at the bottle. "For what?" "The cameras. I know they're excessive." "It's your property." "Yes, but one of them has a direct view of your kitchen window. I thought you should know." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Why would you point a camera at my kitchen?" "I didn't. The installer did. I had him adjust it." She held out the bottle. "Hence the wine." He didn't take it. "I don't drink." "Coffee, then?" "It's 10 o'clock." "So?" "So most people don't drink coffee at 10 o'clock." "I'm not most people." Ethan almost smiled again. He caught himself and stepped back, letting her inside. The garage smelled like oil and metal shavings. Aurora set the wine bottle on the workbench and looked around, her gaze lingering on the half-assembled motorcycles. "You do this alone?" she asked. "Yeah." "No employees?" "Can't afford employees." "How long does a restoration take?" "Depends. Couple months, usually. Longer if the frame's rusted." She ran her hand along the seat of the Norton Commando. "You sell them?" "Sometimes." "For how much?" "Enough." Aurora raised an eyebrow. "You're not big on details, are you?" "Not with strangers. We're neighbors. We met yesterday." "True." She leaned against the workbench, arms crossed. "Can I ask you something?" "You just did." "Funny. Do you always live like this?" "Like what?" "Alone. Quiet. Locked down." Ethan's expression went flat. "I'm not locked down." "You've got one friend in this town, the guy who runs the diner. Your daughter goes to school and comes straight home. You don't go to neighborhood events. You barely leave your property except for errands." She tilted her head. "That's not living. That's hiding." Ethan felt heat rise in his chest. "You don't know anything about me." "I know enough." "Yeah? And how's that?" Aurora's smile was sharp. "Because I do the same thing." The air in the garage went still. Ethan stared at her, trying to decide if she was mocking him. She wasn't. "Why?" he asked quietly. "Same reason as you, probably. Something bad happened. I got tired of people. I moved somewhere nobody would bother me." She glanced toward the house. "How's that working out for you?" "Fine. Liar. You don't know me." "I don't need to. I can see it." Aurora pushed off the workbench and walked toward the door. "Thanks for not calling the cops about Titan." "I wouldn't do that. Most people would." "I'm not most people." She smiled, a real smile this time, the kind that reached her eyes. "No, you're not." Then she was gone. Ethan stood in the garage for a long time, staring at the bottle of wine she left behind. He didn't drink it, but he didn't throw it away, either. 3 days later, Chloe came home from school and announced that she'd invited Aurora to her class presentation. Ethan looked up from the stove. "You did what?" "We're doing family heritage projects. I told Ms. Rodriguez that our neighbor's a billionaire, and she got really excited." "Chloe, Ms. Rodriguez said if Aurora comes, she'll bring her camera, and we can record the whole thing for the school website." Ethan set down the spatula. "You can't just invite people without asking me first." "Why not?" "Because that's not how things work." She said yes. "When?" "This morning. I saw her walking Titan and I asked." Ethan closed his eyes. "Chloe." "What?" "She was nice about it." "That's not the point." "Then what is the point?" Ethan didn't have an answer. The presentation was on Friday. Ethan spent the next 2 days trying to figure out how to uninvite Aurora without making Chloe cry. But every conversation ended with his daughter staring at him like he'd just kicked a puppy. On Friday morning, he gave up and drove Chloe to school. Aurora was already there. She stood outside the classroom in a navy blazer and black slacks, looking like she'd stepped out of a boardroom. Parents and teachers hovered nearby, whispering and stealing glances. Chloe ran over and grabbed Aurora's hand. "You came!" "I said I would." "Dad didn't think you would." Aurora looked at Ethan. "Dad doesn't think much of me, does he?" Ethan felt his face heat. "That's not—" "It's fine. I'm used to it." Miss Rodriguez appeared in the doorway, a young woman with bright eyes and an overly enthusiastic smile. "Ms. Sinclair, thank you so much for joining us. This is such a treat for the kids." Aurora shook her hand politely. "Happy to help." The presentation was supposed to last 20 minutes. It went for an hour. Chloe stood at the front of the class, talking about her family tree, her grandmother's recipes, the town where Ethan grew up. Then she pointed at Aurora and said, "And this is my neighbor. She's a billionaire." The room erupted in whispers. Aurora handled it perfectly. She answered questions about her company, her career, what it was like being the youngest woman to build a tech empire from scratch. She didn't talk down to the kids. She didn't sugarcoat the hard parts. When one boy asked if she was lonely, Aurora paused. "Sometimes," she said quietly, "success doesn't mean you're happy. It just means you're successful." Ethan, standing in the back of the room, felt something twist in his chest. After the presentation, parents swarmed Aurora with questions, business cards, requests for advice. She deflected most of them with practiced ease, but Ethan could see the exhaustion creeping into her expression. He waited until the crowd thinned, then walked over. "You okay?" Aurora blinked, surprised. "Yeah, why?" "You look tired." "I am tired." "Then why'd you come?" "Because your daughter asked me to." "You barely know her." "I know, but she reminds me of someone." "Who?" Aurora looked away. "Me, before I learned to stop trusting people." Ethan didn't know what to say to that. They stood in silence while parents filed out of the classroom, dragging their kids toward the parking lot. Chloe was already outside, talking to a group of classmates who suddenly thought she was the coolest person alive. "She's going to expect you to come around more now," Ethan said. "I know. I can't stop her. Once she decides she likes someone, I get it." Aurora met his eyes. "You don't want me in your life. It's not that. Then what is it?" Ethan hesitated. "People like you don't stay in places like this." "People like me?" "Rich, important, connected. You'll get bored in 6 months and disappear, and Chloe will be crushed." Aurora's expression hardened. "You don't know anything about me. I know enough." "Do you?" She stepped closer, her voice dropping. "You think I moved here because I was bored? You think I spent $2 million on a house in the middle of nowhere because I felt like slumming it?" Ethan held his ground. "Then why are you here?" "Because the alternative was worse." She walked away before he could respond. Ethan stood in the empty classroom, staring after her, wondering what the hell that meant. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the conversation over and over. Because the alternative was worse. What did that mean? What was Aurora running from? At 2 in the morning, he gave up and went downstairs. Through the kitchen window, he could see lights on in Aurora's house. Not just 1 or 2 rooms. The entire mansion was lit up like a damn airport. He watched for a while, then grabbed his jacket and stepped outside. The air was cold, sharp enough to sting his lungs. He walked across the street and stood at the edge of Aurora's driveway, staring up at the house. One of the security cameras swiveled toward him. A moment later, the front door opened. Aurora stood in the doorway, barefoot, wearing sweatpants and an oversized sweater. "You always creep around people's houses at 2 in the morning?" "I wasn't creeping." "You were standing in my driveway staring at my house." "I saw the lights." And I thought maybe something was wrong." Aurora studied him for a long moment. "You want to come in?" Ethan hesitated. "I don't think that's a good idea." "Why not?" "Because I don't know you." "You keep saying that." "Because it's true." Aurora sighed. "Fine. Stay out there and freeze. I'm making tea." She left the door open. Ethan stood there for 30 seconds, then walked inside. The interior of the mansion looked like a museum. High ceilings, marble floors, furniture that probably cost more than Ethan's truck. Everything was pristine, untouched, like nobody actually lived there. Aurora led him into the kitchen, a massive space with stainless steel appliances and a center island the size of Ethan's garage. She filled a kettle and set it on the stove. "You don't have to stay," she said without turning around. "I know." "But you're still here." "Yeah." "Why?" Ethan didn't answer. The kettle started to whistle. Aurora poured 2 cups of tea and slid one across the counter toward him. They sat in silence. Finally, Aurora spoke. "You want to know why I'm here?" "You don't have to." "I was engaged," she said quietly, "to a man named Damian Cross. He helped me build my company from the ground up. We were supposed to get married last year." Ethan waited. 2 weeks before the wedding, I found out he'd been forging contracts, stealing investors, setting up shell companies in my name so he could funnel money out of the business. Aurora stared into her tea. "He wasn't building the company with me. He was stealing it." "What did you do?" "I called off the wedding, fired him, took him to court." She laughed bitterly. "He sued me for emotional damages, launched a media campaign saying I was unstable, Convinced half my board to side with him. Did you win? Eventually, but it cost me everything. Partnerships fell apart. Investors pulled out. My reputation tanked. She looked up at Ethan. So I sold most of my shares, paid off the lawsuits, and disappeared. That's why I'm here. Ethan felt something shift in his chest. I'm sorry. Don't be. I made my choices. Still, Aurora smiled faintly. You're a good person, Ethan Vale. You don't know that. I do. How? Because you're sitting in my kitchen at 2 a.m. drinking tea you don't even like just because you thought I might be lonely. Ethan looked down at his cup. This tea is awful. Aurora laughed, a real, unguarded laugh that lit up her entire face. For the first time since she arrived, Ethan saw the woman underneath the armor, and it scared the hell out of him. After that night in Aurora's kitchen, something shifted between them. Not dramatically, not obviously, but enough that Ethan noticed the weight of her presence across the street felt different, less like a threat, more like a question he didn't know how to answer. Chloe noticed too. You like her, she announced one morning over breakfast, stabbing her fork into a pile of scrambled eggs. Ethan looked up from his coffee. What? Aurora, you like her? I barely know her. You talked to her until 3 a.m. last week. How do you know that? Because I heard you come back inside. The stairs creak. Chloe grinned. So, do you like her? It's complicated. That means yes. That means it's complicated. Chloe rolled her eyes in a way that made her look exactly like her mother, which made Ethan's chest hurt for reasons he didn't want to examine. He dropped Chloe at school 20 minutes later and drove to the hardware store to pick up parts for the Triumph rebuild. When he got back, there was a black Mercedes parked in Aurora's driveway, and 2 men in expensive suits standing on her front porch. Ethan carried the parts into his garage and tried not to stare. 10 minutes later, Aurora appeared in his driveway, her face tight with anger. You busy? She asked. Ethan set down his wrench. What's wrong? Lawyers, they showed up unannounced with new paperwork from Damien's legal team. I thought that was settled. So did I. Aurora's jaw clenched. Apparently he's filing another suit. This time, claiming I used company resources for personal gain during our relationship. Did you? No, but that doesn't matter. He knows I don't want to go back to court. He's banking on me settling just to make it go away. Ethan wiped his hands on a rag. What are you going to do? Fight it. Again. She looked exhausted. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have come over here. I just needed to talk to someone who isn't paid to listen to me. It's fine. You sure? Yeah. Aurora leaned against the doorframe, her shoulders dropping slightly. Can I ask you something? Go ahead. How did you survive your divorce? Ethan's chest tightened. I didn't have a choice. That's not an answer. He hesitated, then set the wrench down completely and turned to face her. My ex-wife had an affair with her business partner. When I found out, she told me it was my fault for being boring, for not making enough money, for caring more about motorcycles than her career. He paused. Then she filed for divorce, and her lawyer made sure I walked away with nothing except Chloe and a storage unit full of tools. Aurora's expression softened. That's brutal. Yeah, but I got Chloe, so I survived. You didn't just survive, you rebuilt. Barely. Still, Aurora met his eyes. That takes strength. Ethan didn't know what to say to that, so he changed the subject. You want coffee? At 10 a.m? You drank it at 2 a.m. last week. Aurora smiled, a small, tired smile that made her look younger. Fair point. They sat in Ethan's kitchen drinking terrible coffee out of mismatched mugs while Aurora explained the lawsuit in detail. Ethan didn't understand half the legal terminology, but he understood enough to know Damien Cross was a vindictive bastard who couldn't let go. He's not going to stop, Aurora said quietly. Even if I win this, he'll file something else. He'll keep coming until I break. Then don't break. Easy for you to say. I didn't say it was easy. I said don't break. Aurora looked at him for a long moment. You really believe that? I have to. If I didn't, I would have quit 3 years ago. What stopped you? Ethan glanced toward the stairs where he could still picture Chloe running down every morning with her wild curls and mismatched socks. Her, Aurora nodded slowly. You're a good father. I try. Most people just try. You actually succeed. Ethan felt heat rise in his face. You don't know that. I do. I've been watching. That's creepy. Aurora laughed. I have security cameras pointed at your house. Everything I do is creepy. The tension broke. They finished their coffee and Aurora left, but not before thanking him in a way that felt heavier than the words deserved. Ethan stood at the kitchen window, watching her walk back across the street, and wondered when he'd started caring whether she was okay. That was dangerous. Caring was dangerous. He'd learned that the hard way. 2 weeks passed. Aurora's lawyers came and went. The lawsuit dragged on. Ethan kept his distance, focused on work, on Chloe, on keeping their life as simple and predictable as possible. But Aurora kept showing up, not in dramatic ways, not in intrusive ways, just small moments that added up before Ethan realized what was happening. Titan escaped 3 more times, always ending up in Ethan's garage. Aurora would appear a few minutes later, apologetic and slightly amused, and they'd talk while she clipped the leash back on. Chloe started doing her homework at Aurora's kitchen table on Thursdays because Aurora had faster internet and didn't mind the company. One Saturday morning, Ethan found Aurora sitting on his front porch with 2 cups of coffee and a bag of donuts from the bakery 2 towns over. You didn't have to do this, he said. I was already up, thought you might want breakfast. At 6 in the morning? I don't sleep well. Ethan sat down beside her. They ate donuts in silence while the sun came up over Silver Creek, turning the sky shades of pink and orange that looked too pretty to be real. This town's quiet, Aurora said after a while. That's why I moved here. You ever miss the noise? No? Liar. Ethan glanced at her. You miss it? Aurora considered the question. Sometimes, not the noise itself, but the feeling of being part of something bigger. She broke off a piece of donut. Now I'm just part of nothing. You're part of this. This? Silver Creek, the neighborhood, Chloe's school presentations. Ethan paused. My terrible coffee. Aurora smiled. Your coffee is terrible. I know. Why don't you fix it? Because fixing things costs money. I could... No. Aurora raised an eyebrow. I didn't even finish. You were going to offer to buy me a new coffee maker. The answer's no. Why? Because I don't need charity. It's not charity. It's a gift. Same thing. Aurora's expression shifted. Something between frustration and understanding. You're proud. I'm broke. There's a difference. Not much of one? Ethan didn't respond. They finished their donuts. Aurora left. Ethan spent the rest of the day rebuilding the Triumph's electrical system and trying not to think about the fact that he'd just had the most comfortable conversation he'd had in years with a woman who terrified him. The breaking point came on a Tuesday. Ethan was picking Chloe up from school when he saw a man standing near the playground. Tall, mid-40s, wearing a suit that screamed money and a smile that screamed lawyer. Ethan's instincts kicked in immediately. Stay in the truck, he told Chloe. Why? Just stay. He walked toward the man who was now talking to one of the teachers. As Ethan got closer, he caught fragments of the conversation. Just trying to verify some information about Ms. Sinclair. Don't know if I'm comfortable. Public record? Really? Nothing invasive? Ethan stepped between them. Can I help you? The man turned, his smile widening. Ethan Vale? Who's asking? Marcus Brennan. I'm an investigator working for Cross Legal Partners. He held out a business card. I'm gathering information for a case involving Aurora Sinclair. I understand you're neighbors? Ethan didn't take the card. What kind of information? Just background, living situation, behavior, whether she's demonstrated any instability or erratic decision-making. You're asking me to spy on her. I'm asking you to be honest about what you've observed. I've observed that you're standing outside my daughter's school, asking questions you have no right to ask. Marcus's smile didn't falter. Mr. Vale, I understand you're protective, but this is a legal matter. If you refuse to cooperate, I can subpoena you. Then subpoena me. I'm trying to be polite, and I'm trying to pick up my kid without dealing with whatever bullshit lawsuit you're fishing for. Ethan stepped closer. Leave. Now. Marcus studied him for a moment, then pocketed his business card. You're making a mistake. Wouldn't be my first. The investigator walked away. Ethan stood there until his hand stopped shaking, then went back to the truck. Chloe looked worried. What was that about? Nothing. Dad, it's handled. But it wasn't handled. That night, after Chloe went to bed, Ethan walked across the street and knocked on Aurora's door. She answered in sweatpants and a t-shirt, her hair loose around her shoulders. Ethan, what's wrong? Damien sent someone to my daughter's school. Aurora's face went pale. What? An investigator, Marcus Brennan. He was asking the teachers about you, trying to get me to talk. What did you say? I told him to leave. Aurora closed her eyes. I'm so sorry. Don't apologize. Just tell me the truth. How bad is this? She opened the door wider. Come in. They sat in Aurora's living room, which felt too big and too empty for two people. Aurora poured herself a glass of wine, offered one to Ethan, remembered he didn't drink, and poured herself another glass instead. Damien's trying to prove I'm unstable, she said, that I made reckless decisions during our relationship, that I can't be trusted to run a company. She took a long drink. If he can get people in Silver Creek to say I'm erratic or paranoid or isolated, it strengthens his case. That's insane. That's the law. Ethan leaned forward. What happens if he wins? I lose control of what's left of my company. He gets a settlement, and my reputation is destroyed permanently. Can you fight it? I am fighting it. But he has more resources, more connections, more time. Aurora set down her glass. I moved here to get away from this. I thought if I just disappeared, he'd leave me alone. Guys like that don't leave people alone. I know that now. They sat in silence. Finally, Ethan spoke. What if you had proof? Aurora looked up. Proof of what? That he's the one who's unstable. That he's harassing you. That everything he's accusing you of is projection. I don't have that kind of proof. You have security cameras. Recording my own property doesn't prove anything about him. No, but it proves he's sending investigators to harass your neighbors. Ethan met her eyes. Let me help. Ethan, I'm serious. If Damien's going to drag this into my life, I'm not just going to sit back and watch. Aurora stared at him. Why would you do that? Because you asked me not to break, so I'm asking you the same thing. Her eyes filled with something Ethan couldn't name. She looked away quickly, wiping at her face. You don't know what you're offering. Then explain it to me. Aurora took a shaky breath. If you help me, Damien will come after you too. He'll dig into your past, your divorce, your finances. Anything he can use to discredit you. Let him. You have a daughter. I know, and I'm not going to teach her that you run away when someone powerful tries to hurt people. Aurora's voice cracked. You barely know me. I know enough. She covered her face with her hands. Ethan didn't move. He just sat there, letting her break in a way he suspected she hadn't let herself break in years. When she finally looked up, her face was blotchy and her eyes were red, and she looked more human than he'd ever seen her. Okay, she whispered. Okay? Okay. I'll take your help. Ethan nodded. Then we start tomorrow. The next 2 weeks turned Ethan's quiet life upside down. Aurora gave him access to her legal files, and Ethan spent every night after Chloe went to bed reading through contracts, emails, and depositions. He didn't understand half of it, but he understood enough to see the pattern. Damien Cross wasn't just suing Aurora. He was systematically destroying her. Every business decision she'd made in the past 5 years had been reframed as reckless. Every partnership that fell apart was blamed on her instability. Every investor who pulled out was cited as evidence that she couldn't be trusted. And underneath all of it, Ethan found something else. Forged signatures, backdated contracts, emails that had been altered to change context. He's been planning this for years, Ethan said one night, spreading documents across Aurora's kitchen table. Aurora looked exhausted. I know. No. I mean, he's been planning this since before you even got engaged. Look, Ethan pointed to a contract dated 3 years earlier. This agreement gives him partial ownership of your patents, but the signature doesn't match your handwriting. Aurora leaned closer. That's not my signature. Exactly, which means he forged it. How did I not catch this? Because you trusted him. Aurora's hands clenched into fists. I'm so stupid. You're not stupid. You're human. Same thing. No, it's not. Ethan met her eyes. You loved him. That doesn't make you stupid. It makes him a liar. Aurora's expression crumbled. Before Ethan could stop himself, he reached across the table and took her hand. She didn't pull away. They sat like that for a long time, the contracts scattered between them like evidence of every mistake they'd both made. Chloe figured it out on her own. Ethan came downstairs one Saturday morning to find her sitting at the kitchen table with a notebook, writing something in her careful, blocky handwriting. What are you doing? He asked. Homework. On a Saturday? It's not school homework, it's life homework. Ethan poured himself coffee. What's life homework? Chloe looked up. I'm making a list of reasons why you and Aurora should stop pretending you're just friends. Ethan nearly dropped his mug. Chloe, you like her. She likes you. You both act weird around each other, and you keep staying up late working on her legal stuff even though you don't understand half of it. Chloe tapped her pencil against the notebook. That's not friendship. That's feelings. It's complicated. You always say that. Because it always is. Chloe crossed her arms. Do you like her or not? Ethan sat down across from his daughter and tried to figure out how to explain adult emotions to an 8-year-old. I don't know, he said finally. That's a lie. It's not a lie. I genuinely don't know. Why not? Because liking someone means risking getting hurt. And I'm tired of getting hurt. Chloe's expression softened. Is that why you don't date? Yeah. That's sad. I know. Aurora's not like Mom. Ethan looked up sharply. What? Aurora's not like Mom, Chloe repeated. Mom left because she wanted something better. Aurora's here because she doesn't want anything except to be safe. She pushed the notebook across the table. That's different. Ethan stared at his daughter, wondering when she'd gotten so perceptive. You're 8, he said weakly. I'm observant. Clearly, Chloe grinned. So are you going to tell her? Tell her what? That you like her. Absolutely not. Why? Because that's not how adults do things. Then how do adults do things? Ethan didn't have an answer. Chloe took her notebook back and kept writing. That night, Ethan went back to Aurora's house. She was sitting on the floor of her living room, surrounded by legal documents, her laptop balanced on a stack of files. You look like hell, Ethan said. Aurora didn't look up. Thanks. When's the last time you ate? I don't know. Lunch? It's 9 o'clock. Then lunch. Ethan walked into her kitchen, opened the fridge, and found exactly 3 things: bottled water, leftover Chinese food, and a container of Greek yogurt that expired 2 weeks ago. You live like a college student, he called out. I'm busy. You're going to starve. He reheated the Chinese food and brought it to her on a plate. Aurora blinked up at him. You didn't have to do that. Eat. She ate. Ethan sat down beside her, scanning the documents spread across the floor. What are you working on? Trying to prove the patent forgery. If I can get one document authenticated, the rest of the case falls apart. Can you prove it? Maybe. There's a forensic document analyst in Boston who owes me a favor. But getting the original contracts from Damien's office is impossible. Not impossible, just illegal. Aurora looked at him. What? You said his office has the originals. Where's his office? Manhattan. Why? Because I know someone who used to work in corporate litigation. She specialized in discovery. If there's a way to get those documents legally, she'll know. Aurora's eyes widened. You're serious? Yeah. Who is she? Ethan hesitated. My ex-wife's lawyer. The one who destroyed you in court? Yeah. And you think she'll help me? No, but I think she'll help me if I ask the right way. Aurora set down her plate. Why would you do that? Because I told you I'd help. Ethan, if you contact her, she's going to ask questions. She's going to dig into why you care about this. And if Damien finds out, let him. Aurora's voice dropped. You could lose custody of Chloe. Not if we win. And if we don't? Ethan met her eyes. Then at least I tried. Aurora stared at him like she was trying to solve a puzzle she didn't have all the pieces for. You're insane, she whispered. Probably. Why are you doing this? Ethan didn't answer right away. He looked at the woman sitting beside him, surrounded by evidence of someone else's cruelty, fighting a battle she shouldn't have to fight alone. And he realized Chloe was right. It wasn't friendship. It was something else entirely. Because you matter, he said quietly. Aurora's breath hitched. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then Aurora leaned forward and kissed him. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't perfect. It was messy and hesitant and tasted like Chinese food in desperation. When she pulled back, her eyes were wide with panic. I'm sorry, she said quickly. I shouldn't have... Ethan kissed her back. This time it wasn't hesitant. They broke apart, breathing hard, foreheads pressed together, the legal documents scattered around them like forgotten wreckage. This is a bad idea, Aurora whispered. I know. We barely know each other. I know. I'm a disaster. So am I. Aurora laughed shakily. What are we doing? Ethan pulled back just enough to look at her. I have no idea. That's comforting. You want comfort? Get a therapist. You want honesty? You're stuck with me. Aurora's eyes filled with tears again, but this time she was smiling. They sat on the floor of her too-big house, holding each other like they were the only solid things left in a world that kept trying to pull them apart. And for the first time in 3 years, Ethan let himself believe that maybe broken people could still build something worth keeping. They didn't talk about the kiss. Not the next morning when Ethan found Aurora on his porch again with coffee and bagels, both of them carefully avoiding eye contact. Not the day after that when Chloe asked why Aurora looked nervous, and Ethan changed the subject so fast he nearly gave himself whiplash. Not even 3 days later, when they sat in Aurora's kitchen going through legal documents and their hands brushed, and they both pretended it didn't send electricity up their spines. Instead, they fell into a rhythm that felt dangerous precisely because it felt so natural. Ethan would drop Chloe at school, come home, work on motorcycles until noon, then cross the street to Aurora's house, where they'd spend hours digging through Damien's case files. Aurora taught him how to read contracts. Ethan taught her how to spot inconsistencies in dates and signatures. They ordered takeout and ate it cold because they forgot to stop working. They argued about legal strategy and laughed at how little either of them actually knew what they were doing. And every night, Ethan would go home and lie awake wondering what the hell he'd gotten himself into. The call to his ex-wife's lawyer came on a Thursday. Ethan sat in his truck in the parking lot of the grocery store, staring at the number he'd sworn he'd never dial again. His finger hovered over the screen for a full minute before he finally pressed it. 3 rings. Then a voice he hadn't heard in 3 years, smooth and sharp as a knife. Diane Fletcher. Ethan's throat went dry. It's Ethan Vale. Silence. Then, carefully, well, this is unexpected. I need a favor. You need a favor. Diane laughed, short and bitter. That's rich considering the last time we spoke you told me to go to hell. I remember. So do I. Vividly. Papers shuffled in the background. What do you want, Ethan? He took a breath. I need help with a case. Corporate litigation. Forged documents, fraudulent contracts, the kind of thing you used to specialize in before you started demolishing people's lives in divorce court. Another pause. Who's the case for? A friend. You don't have friends. I do now. Diane's voice shifted, curiosity creeping in beneath the ice. What kind of friend needs corporate litigation help bad enough that you'd call me? The kind being destroyed by her ex-fiancé. Her. Diane drew the word out. Interesting. Does this friend have a name? Aurora Sinclair. The line went completely silent. Then Diane laughed, really laughed, the kind of laugh that meant she'd just figured something out and found it hilarious. You're kidding. I'm not. Ethan Vale, the man who swore off women forever after his divorce, is calling me to help Aurora Sinclair. The Aurora Sinclair. The billionaire. Yeah. How the hell did you end up involved with her? She moved in across the street. Diane laughed again. Of course she did. Because your life is apparently a terrible rom-com now. Are you going to help or not? What's in it for me? Ethan's jaw clenched. You get to be a decent human being for once. Pass. Try again. He closed his eyes, hating himself. I'll owe you. Now we're talking. Diane's voice turned calculating. What kind of documents are we talking about? Ethan explained the patent forgeries, the backdated contracts, the trail of manipulation Damien had left behind. Diane listened without interrupting, which meant she was actually interested. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. This is big, she said finally. I know. If you're right about the forgeries, Cross could face criminal charges. I know that too. And you're willing to put yourself in the middle of this? After everything you went through? Ethan looked across the parking lot toward Silver Creek, toward the town where he'd built a life specifically designed to avoid this kind of chaos. Yeah, he said. I am. Diane sighed. You're either brave or stupid. Probably stupid. Probably. Papers shuffled again. Send me everything you have. I'll take a look. No promises. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. If this blows up in your face, I'm not going down with you. The line went dead. Ethan sat in his truck for another 10 minutes, trying to convince himself he'd made the right choice. He wasn't convinced, but he drove home anyway. Aurora was waiting on his porch when he pulled into the driveway, Titan sprawled at her feet like a hairy rug. She stood when she saw him, her expression unreadable. Where were you? She asked. Grocery store. For 2 hours? I had a phone call to make. Aurora's eyes narrowed. What kind of phone call? Ethan climbed out of the truck and walked past her into the house. She followed, Titan trotting behind them. Ethan. He set his keys on the counter. I called Diane Fletcher. Aurora went very still. Your ex-wife's lawyer? Yeah. The one who destroyed you? Yeah. Why? Because she's the best corporate litigator I know. And because if we're going to prove Damien forged those contracts, we need someone who knows how to get evidence that's locked in a Manhattan office building. Aurora's face drained of color. You told her about me. I had to. What did you say? The truth. That you're being framed. That Damien's been planning this for years. That the documents we found prove he forged your signatures. And what did she say? She said she'd look at what we have. Aurora started pacing, her hands shaking. Do you understand what you just did? I'm trying to help you. You just painted a target on your back. Diane Fletcher doesn't do favors. She collects leverage. And now she knows you're involved with a billionaire fighting a legal war with one of the most powerful men in New York. I know. Do you? Because the second Damien finds out you're working against him, he's going to dig into your life, your finances, your custody arrangement. Aurora's voice cracked. He's going to come after Chloe. Ethan's chest tightened. I know the risks. Then why did you do it? Because you can't fight this alone. I've been fighting alone my entire life. And how's that working out for you? Aurora stopped pacing, her eyes filled with tears. I didn't ask you to do this, she whispered. I know. I didn't ask you to risk everything. I know. Then why? Ethan crossed the kitchen and took her face in his hands, forcing her to look at him. Because I care about you, he said quietly. And I'm tired of watching people I care about get hurt while I stand on the sidelines doing nothing. Aurora's breath hitched. You barely know me. I know enough. What if this destroys you? Then it destroys me, but at least I'll know I tried. A tear slid down Aurora's cheek. Ethan wiped it away with his thumb. You're an idiot, she whispered. Probably. I should tell you to leave, to walk away before this gets worse. You should. But I won't. Good. Aurora kissed him then, desperate and scared and grateful all at once. Ethan kissed her back, his hands tangling in her hair, and for a few seconds the world outside his kitchen stopped mattering. When they broke apart, Aurora pressed her forehead against his. If this goes wrong, it won't. You don't know that. No, but I'm choosing to believe it anyway, Aurora laughed shakily. That's not very pragmatic. I'm not very pragmatic. I noticed. They stood there holding each other until Titan started whining because he needed to pee. Aurora left a few minutes later, and Ethan spent the rest of the afternoon trying to explain to Chloe why there was lipstick on his collar without actually explaining anything. His daughter was 8, not stupid. You kissed her, Chloe said, grinning like she'd just won the lottery. It's complicated. You always say that. Because it always is. Chloe rolled her eyes. Do you love her? Ethan nearly choked on his coffee. What? Do you love her? Chloe, I've known her for 6 weeks. So? So that's not enough time to love someone. Mom said she loved you after 2 weeks. And look how that turned out. Chloe's expression softened. Aurora's not Mom. I know. Then why are you scared? Ethan stared at his daughter, wondering when she'd become the wise one in their relationship. Because love means trust, he said quietly, and I don't trust easily anymore. Do you trust Aurora? Ethan thought about it, about the way Aurora let him into her house at 2 a.m, about how she cried in front of him without pretending she was fine, about how she looked at Chloe like she genuinely cared, not like she was performing kindness for an audience. Yeah, he said finally. I think I do. Chloe smiled. Then stop being scared. It's not that simple. Yes, it is. You're just making it complicated because you're a grown-up and grown-ups are weird. Ethan laughed despite himself. You're probably right. I'm always right. She went back to her homework, humming to herself like she hadn't just completely dismantled her father's emotional defenses. Ethan sat at the kitchen table staring at nothing and wondered when his life had become something he didn't recognize. 3 days later, Diane called back. You were right, she said without preamble. The signatures are forged, all of them. Ethan's heart jumped into his throat. You're sure? I had a forensic analyst look at the scans you sent. The pressure points don't match, the pen strokes are inconsistent, and the dates don't line up with Sinclair's travel schedule. She was in Tokyo when one of these was supposedly signed in New York. Can you prove it in court? With the right documentation, yes, but we need the original contracts. Digital scans won't hold up under cross-examination. How do we get the originals? Legally? We file for discovery and hope Cross's lawyers cooperate. And illegally? Diane laughed. I didn't hear that. Diane. Ethan, I'm a lawyer. I can't tell you to break the law. But if someone hypothetically wanted to retrieve documents from an office building in Manhattan, hypothetically, that person would need access to the building, knowledge of where the documents are stored, and a very good reason to risk felony charges. Diane paused. Hypothetically. Ethan's mind raced. What if someone who worked there gave us access? Do you know someone who works there? No, but Aurora might. Then ask her, because if we don't get those originals, this whole case collapses. Ethan thanked her and hung up. He found Aurora in her backyard, sitting on the porch steps with Titan's head in her lap. She looked up when he approached, her expression wary. Diane called, he said. Aurora straightened. And? She confirmed the forgeries, but we need the original documents to prove it in court. They're in Damien's office. I know. Do you know anyone who still works there? Someone who might help us? Aurora was quiet for a long time. Maybe, she said finally. There's a woman named Jessa. She was my assistant before I left. We were close. Would she help? I don't know. Damien fired half the staff after I walked out. She might not even work there anymore. Can you find out? Aurora nodded slowly. I'll try. That night, while Chloe slept, Aurora made the call. Ethan sat across from her in the kitchen, watching her face shift through a dozen emotions as the phone rang. When someone finally answered, Aurora's voice went soft. Jessa, it's Aurora. Ethan couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but he could see Aurora's shoulders relax slightly. I know. I'm sorry I disappeared. A pause. I need to ask you something. Are you still at Cross Legal? Another pause, longer this time. I need access to Damien's office. There are documents there that prove he forged my signatures on contracts. Aurora's voice hardened. I know how it sounds, but I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important. Silence. Then Aurora's eyes filled with tears. Thank you, she whispered. I'll explain everything later. I promise. She hung up and looked at Ethan. She's still there. She said she can get me in on Saturday when the building's empty. You're not going alone. Oh, Ethan, I'm going with you. If we get caught, then we get caught together. Aurora stared at him. You really are an idiot. So you keep saying. She kissed him again, hard and fast, then pulled away before he could respond. Saturday, she said. We leave at 4 a.m. Ethan nodded, his heart pounding. He went home and spent the next 2 days trying not to think about all the ways this could go wrong. On Saturday morning, he woke Chloe at 3:30 and drove her to his neighbor's house. Mrs. Chen was in her 70s and asked exactly 0 questions when Ethan showed up with a sleepy 8-year-old and a promise to be back by dinner. You in trouble? She asked, taking Chloe's overnight bag. Not yet. But you will be? Probably. Mrs. Chen nodded. Be careful. I will. Aurora picked him up at 4 in a black SUV that looked exactly like the ones that had shown up the night she moved in. She was wearing dark jeans and a leather jacket, her hair pulled back in a tight ponytail. You look like you're about to rob a bank, Ethan said, climbing into the passenger seat. Close enough. They drove to Manhattan in near silence, the highway empty except for long-haul truckers and people who had nowhere better to be at dawn on a Saturday. The city skyline appeared on the horizon as the sun started to rise, all glass and steel and money. Ethan had been to New York exactly once, for his honeymoon. He'd hated it then, and he hated it now. Too loud, too crowded, too many people living on top of each other like rats in a cage. You okay? Aurora asked. Fine. You look tense. I am tense. Second thoughts? About 100 of them. Aurora's mouth twitched. Want to turn back? No. Good, because we're here. She pulled into an underground parking garage beneath a glass tower that stretched so high Ethan couldn't see the top. Aurora parked in a spot marked reserved and turned off the engine. Jessa's meeting us at the service entrance in 10 minutes, she said. We'll have maybe an hour before security cycles back through Damien's floor. What if someone sees us? Then we run. Great plan. You have a better one? Ethan didn't. They got out of the SUV and walked through the garage to a plain metal door. Aurora knocked 3 times. The door opened immediately. The woman on the other side was younger than Ethan expected, maybe 25, with bright red hair and sharp green eyes. She looked terrified. Aurora, she breathed. Jessa. Aurora pulled her into a hug. Thank you for this. Are you sure about this? If Damien finds out I helped you, he won't. I promise. Jessa looked at Ethan. Who's this? A friend. Does your friend know what he's getting into? Ethan met her eyes. Yeah, I do. Jessa studied him for a moment, then nodded. Okay, follow me. She led them through a maze of hallways and service elevators, using keycards to bypass security checkpoints. The building was eerily quiet, just the hum of ventilation systems and the distant echo of their footsteps. They took an elevator to the 42nd floor. When the doors opened, Ethan's stomach dropped. Damien Cross's office took up the entire floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, leather furniture, abstract art that probably cost more than Ethan's house. Everything sleek and expensive and designed to intimidate. His personal files are in the back office, Jessa whispered. I'll keep watch. You have 45 minutes. Aurora nodded and grabbed Ethan's hand, pulling him toward a door at the far end of the room. The back office was smaller but no less intimidating. File cabinets lined one wall. A massive desk sat in the center, covered in papers and a laptop that was probably worth more than Ethan made in a year. Aurora went straight to the file cabinets. Help me look, she said, pulling open drawers. Anything dated between 2019 and 2023. Anything with my name on it. They tore through the files, hands shaking, adrenaline screaming through Ethan's veins. He found contracts, memos, financial statements, none of it useful. Then Aurora made a sound. Ethan. He turned. She was holding a manila folder, her face pale. I found them. Inside were the original contracts, the forged signatures, the backdated agreements that gave Damien control of patents he had no right to. All of it. Proof. Aurora's hand shook as she pulled out her phone and started photographing every page. We need to take the originals, Ethan said. We can't. If they go missing, Damien will know someone was here. Then what's the point? The photographs are enough for Diane to authenticate. We just need... The door slammed open. Ethan spun around. Damien Cross stood in the doorway. He was taller than Ethan expected, mid-40s, with the kind of symmetrical face that looked good in magazine spreads. He wore a suit that probably cost $5,000 and an expression that could freeze fire. Aurora, he said, his voice smooth as glass. Breaking and entering, how delightfully desperate. Aurora didn't move. Damien. And you brought a friend. How cute. Damien's eyes shifted to Ethan. You must be the mechanic. Ethan's blood went cold. How do you... I make it my business to know who Aurora associates with. Ethan Vale, 32, divorced. One daughter, bankruptcy filed 3 years ago. Currently living in a rental property in Silver Creek, New York. Surviving on motorcycle restorations and desperation. Damien smiled. Did I miss anything? Ethan's hands clenched into fists. Aurora stepped between them. Let us leave, Damien. Why would I do that? You just handed me everything I need to destroy you. He pulled out his phone. Security will be here in 3 minutes. The police in 5. By Monday, you'll be facing criminal charges for corporate espionage and theft. We didn't steal anything. No? Then what's in your hand? Aurora looked down at the folder she was still holding. Damien's smile widened. Didn't think this through, did you? Ethan's mind raced. 3 minutes. They had 3 minutes. He looked at Aurora, at Damien, at the folder. Then he grabbed it out of Aurora's hands and ran. Ethan, no! He didn't stop. He bolted through the office, past Jessa, into the hallway. Behind him he could hear Damien shouting, Aurora screaming his name, footsteps pounding after him. Ethan hit the stairwell and started running down, taking the steps 3 at a time. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He ignored it. 32nd floor, 25th, 15th. His lungs burned. His legs screamed. He kept running. At the ground floor, he burst through the emergency exit into the parking garage. Alarms started blaring. Aurora's SUV was still there. Ethan jumped in, turned the key she'd left in the ignition, and slammed the gas. The SUV roared out of the garage into morning sunlight. Ethan drove for 10 blocks before he pulled over, hands shaking so badly he could barely hold the wheel. His phone buzzed again. He pulled it out. 50 missed calls from Aurora. A text message. Where are you? He typed back, safe. Meet at the diner off Route 9. Don't come alone. Then he threw the phone on the passenger seat and stared at the folder sitting in his lap. He'd just stolen evidence from one of the most powerful men in New York, and he had absolutely no idea what came next. The diner off Route 9 smelled like burnt coffee and decades of grease that no amount of cleaning could remove. Ethan sat in a corner booth with the folder on the seat beside him, watching the door and trying not to think about how badly he'd just screwed up his life. His hands still shook. Outside, morning traffic crawled past. Normal people doing normal things. Going to work, picking up groceries, living lives that didn't involve stealing evidence from billionaires. Ethan's phone buzzed again. He ignored it. 20 minutes passed before Aurora's SUV pulled into the parking lot. She got out alone, moving fast, her face tight with anger and something that looked like fear. She spotted Ethan through the window and came straight inside. Are you out of your mind? She hissed, sliding into the booth across from him. Probably. Damien saw you. He has you on camera. He knows your name, where you live, everything about you. I know. Then why did you run? Ethan pushed the folder across the table. because he was going to have us arrested, both of us. And I couldn't let that happen to you. Aurora stared at the folder like it might explode. So you made yourself the target instead. Yeah, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. You're welcome. Aurora's eyes filled with tears. She wiped them away angrily. Do you understand what you just did? Damien's lawyers are going to destroy you. They'll claim you coerced me, manipulated me, stole corporate property for financial gain. Let them. Ethan, I made a choice, Aurora. I knew what I was doing. No, you didn't. You have no idea what he's capable of. The waitress appeared, a tired woman in her 50s who looked like she'd seen every kind of human disaster walk through that door. She refilled Ethan's coffee without asking and looked at Aurora. You want anything, honey? Aurora shook her head. The waitress left. Aurora leaned forward, her voice dropping. Damien called me while I was driving here. He said if I don't drop the lawsuit and sign over the remaining patents, he's pressing charges against you for corporate espionage. He's already contacted the police. Ethan's stomach dropped. When? An hour ago. Then why aren't they here? Because he's giving me 48 hours to decide. He wants me to choose between saving you and saving my company. That's extortion. That's Damien. Ethan wrapped his hands around his coffee mug, feeling the heat burn through his palms. What are you going to do? Aurora looked at him like he'd just asked the world's dumbest question. I'm going to fight him. What do you think I'm going to do? Even if it means I go to jail? You're not going to jail. You don't know that. Yes, I do, because Diane's already looking at the documents you photographed before you ran. Aurora pulled out her phone and showed him an email chain. She confirmed the forgeries. She's filing an emergency motion on Monday to freeze Damien's assets and open a criminal investigation. Ethan blinked. How did she get the photographs? I sent them to her while you were stealing my car. I didn't steal it. You left the keys. Semantics. Aurora pocketed her phone. The point is, we have proof. Real proof. Enough to destroy Damien's entire case. But we still stole the originals. Technically, you stole the originals. I was just standing there looking pretty. Aurora, I'm kidding, sort of. She reached across the table and took his hand. Diane thinks she can argue that the theft was justified given Damien's fraud. It's a long shot, but it might work. Ethan stared at their joined hands. And if it doesn't, then we figure something else out. That's not a plan. It's the only plan we have. They sat in silence for a long moment. Finally, Ethan spoke. I need to tell Chloe. Aurora's expression softened. What are you going to say? I don't know. The truth, I guess. That you stole documents from a billionaire to help your neighbor? That I did something stupid because I care about someone. Aurora's eyes glistened. She's going to be scared. I know. You sure you want to do this? You could still walk away. Damien doesn't care about you. He cares about me. If you disappear, he'll forget you exist. Ethan met her eyes. I'm not walking away. Why not? Because I love you. The words came out before he could stop them. Aurora froze. Ethan's heart hammered in his chest. I know it's fast. I know it's insane. I know we've only known each other a few weeks and we're in the middle of a legal nightmare and this is probably the worst possible time to say it, but I don't care. I love you, and I'm not walking away. Aurora's breath hitched. A tear slid down her cheek. You're an idiot, she whispered. So you keep saying. I mean it. You're the biggest idiot I've ever met. I know. And I love you too. Ethan's chest tightened. Aurora leaned across the table and kissed him, right there in the greasy diner with the burnt coffee and the tired waitress watching from behind the counter. When they broke apart, Aurora was smiling through her tears. We're going to lose everything, aren't we? She said. Probably. And you're okay with that? Not even a little bit, but I'm doing it anyway. Aurora laughed shakily. Then I guess we're both idiots. Guess so. They left the diner 20 minutes later. Aurora drove Ethan back to Silver Creek, both of them silent, both of them scared, both of them refusing to admit it out loud. When they pulled up to Ethan's house, Mrs. Chen's car was still in the driveway. Ethan could see Chloe through the kitchen window, sitting at the table with a coloring book. You want me to come in with you? Aurora asked. No, I need to do this alone. Okay. Ethan started to get out, then stopped. Aurora? Yeah? Thank you for not giving up. Aurora's eyes softened. Thank you for not letting me. He kissed her once more, then went inside. Chloe looked up when he walked in, her face lighting up. Dad, you're back! Mrs. Chen stood from the couch, gathering her purse. Everything okay? Yeah, thanks for watching her. Any time. She paused at the door. Ethan, whatever you're dealing with, be careful. I will. She left. Chloe bounced over, wrapping her arms around Ethan's waist. Where were you? New York. Why? I had to help Aurora with something. Chloe pulled back, studying his face with those two smart eyes. Are you in trouble? Ethan knelt down so they were eye level. Maybe. What kind of trouble? The kind where I did something I probably shouldn't have done because I was trying to protect someone I care about. Chloe's expression turned serious. Aurora? Yeah. Is she okay? She will be. Are you okay? Ethan's throat tightened. I don't know yet. Chloe threw her arms around his neck, squeezing tight. I don't want you to go away. I'm not going anywhere. Promise? Ethan held his daughter close, breathing in the smell of her strawberry shampoo, and made a promise he wasn't sure he could keep. I promise. The next 48 hours felt like drowning in slow motion. Diane called Sunday night with an update. She'd filed the emergency motion. The judge would review it Monday morning. If approved, Damien's assets would be frozen pending investigation. If not, Ethan would likely be arrested by Tuesday. How confident are you? Ethan asked. 60-40 in our favor, Diane said. The forgeries are solid, but judges don't like cases that involve theft, even if the theft was justified. So I might go to jail. You might, or you might walk away clean. It's a coin flip. Great. Ethan, if this goes sideways, you need to be prepared. Do you have someone who can take Chloe? His chest constricted. My sister in Pennsylvania. Call her. Give her a heads up. I'm not sending Chloe away. You might not have a choice. Ethan hung up before he said something he'd regret. Aurora came over that night after Chloe went to bed. They sat on Ethan's porch, not talking, just existing in the same space. The lights across the street at Aurora's mansion were all on again, blazing like a beacon. You ever turn those off? Ethan asked. No? Why not? Because the dark scares me. Ethan looked at her. Since when? Since Damien locked me in a conference room during a negotiation and turned off the lights to prove a point about control. Aurora's voice was flat. I had a panic attack. He laughed. Ethan felt rage burn through his chest. I'm going to kill him. Get in line. They sat in silence again. What happens if you lose tomorrow? Aurora asked quietly. Then I lose. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have. Ethan turned to look at her. What happens if you lose? Then Damien wins. He gets my company, my reputation, everything I built. And you're okay with that? No, but I'm not okay with you going to jail either. Aurora's voice cracked. Maybe I should just give him what he wants. Don't. Ethan. Don't you dare give up. Not now. Not after everything. But if you go to jail, then I go to jail, but at least you'll be free. Aurora started crying, the kind of crying that came from deep in her chest, years of holding everything together finally breaking apart. Ethan pulled her close, holding her while she shook. I'm so tired, she whispered against his shoulder. I know. I don't know how to keep doing this. Then don't do it alone. Aurora pulled back, her face blotchy and wet. You really love me? Yeah. Even though I'm a disaster? Especially because you're a disaster. She laughed through her tears. That doesn't make sense. Nothing about us makes sense, but I don't care. Aurora kissed him, tasting like salt and desperation. They stayed on the porch until after midnight, holding each other, pretending the rest of the world didn't exist. Monday morning arrived too fast. Ethan dropped Chloe at school, came home, and sat in his kitchen staring at his phone. Diane said she'd call by noon with the judge's decision. It was 9:47 a.m. Aurora texted, "You okay?" Ethan typed back, "No." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, "Me neither." At 10:15, a black car pulled up across the street. 2 men in suits got out and walked toward Aurora's house. Ethan's stomach dropped. He was halfway out the door when his phone rang. Diane. "Tell me good news," Ethan said. "The judge approved the motion. Damien's assets are frozen pending a full investigation into the fraud." Ethan's knees almost gave out. "We won?" "Not yet, but we didn't lose." Diane paused. "There's something else." "What?" "Damien's lawyers are claiming you and Aurora conspired to frame him. They're calling for a counter-investigation." "Of course they are." "Which means this isn't over. It's going to get worse before it gets better." "How much worse?" "Depositions, subpoenas, media attention. Damien's going to drag both of you through the mud until there's nothing left." Ethan looked across the street at Aurora's house, where the 2 men in suits were now standing on her porch. "Let him try," Ethan said. He hung up and ran. Aurora opened the door just as Ethan reached her driveway. She looked pale, shaken. "They're serving me with a defamation suit," she said. "Damien's claiming I slandered him in the press." "Did you?" "I haven't talked to the press in 6 months." One of the men in suits stepped forward. "Ms. Sinclair, we need you to sign—" "She's not signing anything," Ethan said. The man looked at him. "And you are?" "Her attorney," Ethan lied. "You don't look like an attorney. And you don't look like someone who wants a harassment lawsuit filed against them for serving papers without proper notice." The man's expression hardened. "This is proper notice." "No, it's intimidation, and we have cameras." Ethan pointed at the security system Aurora had installed. "Every angle, every word. So unless you want your firm explaining to a judge why you showed up unannounced at a private residence to bully a woman who's already under legal duress, I suggest you leave." The 2 men exchanged glances. Then they left the papers on the porch and walked back to their car. Aurora stared at Ethan. "You just lied to a process server." "Yeah, that's illegal." "So is half the stuff Damien's doing. I'm just evening the odds." Aurora started laughing, the kind of laugh that sounded a little unhinged. "We're going to lose," she said. "Probably." "And you're okay with that?" "Not even a little bit." Ethan took her hand. "But I'm not giving up, and neither are you." Aurora squeezed his fingers so hard it hurt. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay? Okay, we fight." The news broke that afternoon. Someone leaked the story to the press. By evening, every major outlet was running headlines about Aurora Sinclair's legal war with Damien Cross. Some painted her as a victim, others called her vindictive. A few suggested the whole thing was a publicity stunt. Ethan's name appeared in exactly 3 articles, described as an associate or a friend helping with the case. He knew it wouldn't last. By Tuesday, reporters started showing up in Silver Creek. They parked on Ethan's street, knocked on doors, asked neighbors questions about Aurora, about Ethan, about what kind of relationship they had. Mrs. Chen told them all to leave. The guy who ran the diner threatened to call the cops. Chloe's school put extra security on the playground. And through it all, Damien stayed quiet, which terrified Ethan more than anything. On Wednesday, Diane called again. Damien's team filed a motion to dismiss based on insufficient evidence. Can they do that? They can try. The hearing's scheduled for next Monday. What do we need? More proof. The forgeries are good, but we need witnesses. People who saw Damien manipulate contracts, coerce investors, anything that establishes a pattern. Aurora had employees, people who worked with both of them. Most of them signed NDAs. They can't talk without risking lawsuits. What about Jessa? Diane went quiet. The assistant who let you into the building. Yeah. She'd be perfect, but she's still employed by Cross Legal. If she testifies, she loses her job. Maybe she doesn't care. Most people care about their jobs, Ethan. Then we ask. Worst she can say is no. Diane sighed. I'll reach out. She hung up. Ethan looked across the street at Aurora's house. She was standing in the window watching him. He waved. She waved back. And for just a second, Ethan let himself believe they might actually survive this. Thursday night, everything changed. Ethan was putting Chloe to bed when his phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Stop helping her, or I'll make sure you never see your daughter again." Ethan's blood went cold. Another text. "I know where she goes to school. I know her teacher's name. I know what time you pick her up. Walk away, Ethan, while you still can." His hands shook. He dialed Aurora immediately. "Someone just threatened Chloe." Aurora's voice went sharp. "What?" Ethan read her the messages. "That's Damien," she said. "He's trying to scare you." "It's working. Ethan, he threatened my daughter, Aurora, my 8-year-old daughter." "I know, and I'm so sorry, but you can't let him win." "He already won. The second he brought Chloe into this, he won." Aurora was quiet for a long moment. "What do you want to do?" she asked softly. Ethan closed his eyes, feeling the weight of every bad decision he'd made crashing down at once. "I don't know. Do you want to walk away?" "I want Chloe to be safe." "She will be. I'll hire security, private detail. They'll watch her school, your house, everywhere she goes." "That's not a life. It's temporary." "You don't know that." "No, but I know Damien. And if you walk away, he'll see it as weakness. He'll push harder. He won't stop until he's destroyed both of us." Ethan's chest felt like it was caving in. "Then what do I do?" "You trust me, and you let me protect you the way you've been protecting me." Ethan opened his eyes. Across the street, Aurora stood in her window, phone pressed to her ear, looking directly at him. "Okay," he said. "Okay? Okay. We keep going." Aurora's shoulders sagged with relief. "Thank you. Don't thank me yet." "I will anyway." They stayed on the phone until Ethan's heart rate returned to something close to normal. When he finally hung up, he walked into Chloe's room and sat on the edge of her bed. She was already asleep, curled up with the stuffed rabbit she'd had since she was 3. Ethan brushed the hair back from her forehead. "I'm sorry," he whispered. Chloe stirred but didn't wake. Ethan sat there for a long time, watching his daughter sleep, and prayed he hadn't just made the biggest mistake of his life. Friday morning, Aurora's security team showed up. 2 men and 1 woman, all ex-military, all carrying themselves like they could kill someone with their bare hands if necessary. They introduced themselves to Ethan and explained the protocol. One guard would shadow Chloe at school. Another would monitor the house. The third would rotate between locations. "This is insane," Ethan said. "This is necessary," Aurora replied. She'd come over to supervise the setup, standing in Ethan's kitchen like she owned it, issuing orders and checking equipment. Chloe thought the whole thing was exciting. "Do I get a bodyguard?" she asked, eyes wide. "Sort of," Aurora said. "Cool. Can he carry a gun?" "Absolutely not," Ethan said. The female guard smiled. "Don't worry, kid. I'm way cooler than a gun." Chloe looked skeptical but intrigued. Ethan pulled Aurora aside. "How much is this costing you?" "Don't worry about it." Aurora say, "I said don't worry about it. If Damien wants to threaten your daughter, he's going to have to go through me first." Ethan's throat tightened. "I don't know how to thank you." "You already did. You're still here." She kissed him quickly, then went back to barking orders at the security team. Ethan stood in his kitchen, watching this billionaire woman reorganize his entire life, and felt something shift in his chest. Not love. He already knew he loved her. This was deeper. This was trust. And that terrified him more than anything Damien could throw at them. Because trusting someone meant they could hurt you. And Ethan had been hurt enough for one lifetime. But he was doing it anyway, because some risks were worth taking, even if they destroyed you. The weekend before the hearing felt like waiting for a storm that was already overhead. Ethan couldn't sleep, couldn't focus. He'd start working on a motorcycle and find himself just staring at parts he'd picked up 10 minutes earlier, unable to remember what he'd been doing. Chloe noticed. She always noticed. "You're scared," she said Saturday morning over breakfast. Ethan looked up from his untouched eggs. "I'm fine." Liar. "Chloe, it's okay to be scared, Dad. I'm scared too." Ethan set down his fork. You don't need to be scared. The security team is here. Nothing's going to happen to you. I'm not scared for me. I'm scared for you. Chloe picked at her toast. What happens if you lose on Monday? We're not going to lose. But what if you do? Ethan didn't have an answer that wouldn't terrify her more. Then we deal with it, he said finally. Together. Chloe's eyes filled with tears. I don't want you to go to jail. I'm not going to jail. You don't know that. She was right. He didn't know that. Ethan got up and pulled his daughter into a hug, holding her while she cried into his shirt. 8 years old and already carrying weight no kid should have to carry. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm so sorry I dragged you into this. You didn't drag me. I chose to be here. Chloe pulled back, wiping her face. Because Aurora's nice and she makes you happy, and I want you to be happy. Ethan's chest cracked open. When did you get so smart? I've always been smart. You just finally noticed. He laughed, despite everything. They spent the rest of the morning together, watching terrible cartoons and eating ice cream for lunch, because Ethan had stopped caring about rules that didn't matter. At some point, Aurora came over with Titan, and they all sat in the backyard while the dog dug holes in the grass, and Chloe lectured him about proper yard etiquette. He doesn't speak English, Aurora pointed out. Then you need to train him better.